Okay, so we are continuing with chapter 6 of Savitch edition 10, section 1. The last video is about the techniques for file I/O. So how do we do this? What's the simplest way of getting used to what we want to do? So one thing, we can potentially write everything in C in, C out, and then change the scenes to our whatever you call the object of your input file stream. So far we call it in stream or in file, and then the C out becomes your out stream or out file. Now, when we are doing this, when we have been doing this, we were concerned about the user. So we were asking the user, please enter a number, and then we would read a number. So because we are reading from the file, we don't need to indicate this prompt. We're just going to read the number. So it's going to read one number from the file, the very first one on the top. So my next cin is going to read the next one, and the next one, and the next one. So we generally use the while loop, and we're going to go over that in the next lecture or so, how we're going to read these things from the file. So we have to have a data, and we can verify our data, but we'll worry about that later. And in here even, if remember, we can have the files, the output files, for purpose of human to look at it or to be a data for another program to pick it up. So if I am doing it for data only, I don't need to put any wording, because remember, I have to put the data in a file for another program to pick it up. So if that's the case, I don't want to put any prompt in there. If I want to have it for human, then I might want to format it. I would have a header, I would have columns. We spent some time to do it that way. So, but either case, I don't need to prompt. So the prompts that we were doing to make our program to be more user-friendly is kind of going to be in our way if you do it in the file. So when we were writing to the file so far, whenever you write to a file, the previous one would be deleted. So if you open a file for reading, and then you open a file for writing, the first thing it does is going to delete the previous one. Or you can think about it, that's going to create a new one and put it on top of the previous one. So all your data would be gone when you're doing your writing the way we were doing. And sometimes that's not what we want. We want to keep the old data and we want to write to it. So think about it. For so far, for reading and writing, when you open the file, your pointer would be on the top. So for your writing, for your reading, you're going to read the first data on the first line. For your writing, you would be writing on the top from the beginning. Now, there is a function available that we're going to be using to append. It's in the same library, but it's using a different namespace. You don't have to worry about it, but this is called namespace. So you're using namespace std doesn't apply to this. This is a namespace iOS. So because we're just going to use a couple of times here and there, we are not worried about adding another namespace. So we're going to just use it the way it is. Now, when you open a file, remember, you're going to have an object. You're going to use a dot operator to connect the function to that object. Then we want to connect this open to a file. Now, adding this remember about your overloading functions. So the regular one had one parameter. This one has two parameters, overload function. So it's going to have iOS : app. That means it's appending. Now, when you open this file, it doesn't start from the top. It's going to go start from the bottom. So it's going to preserve the data that you have. So looking at the example, so we are going to put our app over here. We are creating our object over here. Every time we open, we have to check for the fail. And then we are writing this to the file. So this was the original file. We open it and we added more lines to it. Very good idea to practice on this on your own to really understand what's going on. Another thing that we can do is we can ask the user to enter the file name. So in some cases, you might have the user present, and remember in the batch files, generally you don't have a user, it's happening in the middle of the night. But sometimes you want to have a user. So for example, the input file you want to read, you want to know which file they want to read. Or if there's an output file, you want to ask them what file do you want them to write to. So it doesn't happen that often, but that's something that's available. We're going to look at it. So to do that, we're going to create a string. In this case, we are using CString. CString is array of characters. Arrays are next chapter. That's why your book doesn't talk about these things till chapter 8. That's going to have a bracket, and this bracket is going to have the number of characters you want to have plus one extra one for \n. We talk more detail on this in 8.1. You don't have to worry about it. You just know that if you think the maximum number is 15 characters, you put 16 here. If you think your maximum number of characters is going to be 20, you're going to put 21 here. So whatever it is, plus one. So that's the way we're going to be adding the file name. We're going to ask it. So 15 plus 1. And this is a CString that is a section 8.1 if you want to go in there and take a look at it. And the newer models, the newer IDEs, the newer, not IDE, the compilers, you can actually use a string class. The string is a class, CString is not a class. So CString was coming in from the C language that we didn't have any object-oriented in there. A string was added later as an object. Some of you already used a string in previous projects, and we talk more about it on, actually, you know what, I'm going to talk about it in this chapter because it is a very good thing to use, and it's going to make your life much easier knowing about a string, reading from file and writing to a file. It's going to make your life much easier. So I'm going to touch on 8.2. I'm going to go over 8.2 again, not in a detailed way, in a way that how we're going to use it and what is available. Remember, every time you have a class, you have all kind of functions available. So if you create an object string, you're going to have all kind of member functions available to you that you can use, and it's just there, so you can use it. So we're going to go over that. But the newer compiler, you can use a string, but the older ones, this is the way you're going to be using it. So this is the way that your book has it, and you can just basically follow this, how you want to do your file name. And then you can ask the user what's the file name. Remember that this has to be less than this number minus 1. So if this file name is exactly 16, this whole thing is not going to work. We will touch on that on 8.1, but keep in mind, if you're using it this way, your file name has to be 1 less than this number here. It cannot be exactly like that. Okie doke. So that's the way this display 6.4 is going to show. So we are creating our file names like this. We're going to ask for the input file. We're going to ask for output file. And then we're going to use those names to open our IAF stream and OF stream objects. We will have our close at the end, something that we want to do. Okay, so that is basically closing this section. I had, I want you to think about these things for this section. Again, put it on the pause, think about this question, write it down. Don't just put it in your head, because sometimes we think that we know it, but when you write it down, then you know how much you don't know, and hopefully you're going to go back and review the things that you don't know, and this way it's going to stay with you much longer. Okay, so that's going to end this video and chapter 6, section 1.